All right, ready to dive into some serious strategy. Today, we're marching into battle with Sun Tzu. We're taking a deep dive into the art of war. You sent over those excerpts from Lionel Giles' translation, the 1910 one. Still holds up as one of the best, right?
It really does. It's amazing, actually, how a text written that long ago can still teach us so much about strategy, leadership, you name it, even human nature itself.
No kidding. Okay, so before we even get into the tactics and all that, I gotta ask, who was Sun Tzu? Was this a real general, some kind of legend? What's the deal?
$1 million question. It's like stepping into, I don't know, some historical mystery, right? You've got sources like the Shi gives us this whole biography, even that wild story about Sun Tzu training those concubines.
Oh, yeah. The king's concubines turned into a fighting force. I remember that. The king thought it was a joke, right? Until Sun Tzu made his point, gotta follow orders no matter who you are. Powerful stuff.
It really is. But then you look at other records, same period, and nothing. No mention of Sun Tzu at all. Makes you wonder, was this more like a pen name? Or did multiple people write this thing, and we just call them all Sun Tzu now?
Like trying to solve a puzzle, but half the pieces are missing. Okay, so maybe we don't know who Sun Tzu was, but we do have their words. And those words have had a massive impact. What is it about the art of war that makes it so enduring?
It's incredibly insightful,
Yeah.
about how people think and the fundamentals of strategy. Like, those never really change. Take the 5 constant factors. Sun Tzu says those are what shape every conflict. Moral law, heaven, earth, the commander, and method and discipline. He lays it all out.
Okay, let's break those down. Moral law. I feel like there's more to that than just like following the rules, right?
Absolutely. It's bigger than that. Think of it more like a leader being completely in tune with their people, having their respect, their loyalty, that deep sense of shared purpose. Sun Tzu knew that's way more powerful than just fear.
So a leader who has the trust of their team, that's a huge advantage already. What about heaven? Does it get all mystical on us here? Is that what Sun Tzu's getting at?
Not really. Think of heaven as the stuff you can't control. Weather, the timing of things, the seasons, anything that could impact a battle but isn't something you can just, change directly. The point is, you got to recognize these forces and figure out how to use them, work with them.
So don't launch an invasion during monsoon season. Got it. Common sense. But hey, sometimes we need that reminder.
Exactly. Now, Earth, this one's more about what is in your control, terrain, distances, all those strategic locations. Sun Tzu, he was all about understanding the battlefield literally, but also using every feature to your advantage.
So heaven is how you adapt. Earth is what you can leverage.
Yeah.
I like it. They play off each other. Okay, what about the human element? That's where the commander comes in, right?
Right. This is where Sun Tzu really digs into leadership qualities. Wisdom, for sure, but also sincerity, courage, that ability to inspire confidence in everyone around you. Because a brilliant plan is useless without the right person leading the charge.
So not just a genius strategist. They need to rally the troops, lead by example, all that makes sense. And lastly, there's method and discipline. Sounds kind of self-explanatory, but I'm guessing there's some nuance here too.
Always. This one's about organization. Having your logistics down, clear chain of command, basically making sure the army runs like a well-oiled machine. Sun Tzu knew that even the best strategy falls apart if you don't have that solid foundation.
It's like having a team full of stars, right? But if there's no good coach, no real game plan, you're not winning any championships. Okay, these 5 factors, they make a pretty solid framework, even now. But there's this one thing that seems at odds with all this planning. Sun Tzu is big on deception. He even says, straight up, all warfare is based on deception. Isn't that kind of a jerk move?
Sun Tzu knew that deception, when used right, is incredibly powerful. And it's not just about tricking your opponent. It's about understanding their psychology, finding their weaknesses, and creating a psychological edge before the fight even starts.
Outsmart them before they know what hit them. Okay, so how did Sun Tzu suggest actually using deception? What are we talking about here?
Well, he gives this example of pretending to be weaker than you are. Make your enemy overconfident.
Ah, so you lull them into this false sense of security, make them think they've got the upper hand.
Exactly. Plays on their ego, right, their assumptions. And that can lead to some pretty careless mistakes on their part. Sun Tzu also talks about this idea of sowing discord among your enemy's allies, like breaking up their alliances before they can even join forces against you.
So it's not just fighting their army, it's this whole psychological campaign you're waging. And that kind of ties into another one of his big things, speed. Why was a swift victory so important to Sun Tzu? What was he getting at there?
He knew that long, drawn-out conflicts, they just drain everything. Resources, morale, you name it. A fast victory that minimizes your losses, right? Stops things from dragging on so long that even the strongest force starts to crumble. That's got to resonate even today, don't you think?
Totally. Makes me think about like those negotiations that just drag on forever, or those conflicts where neither side can get the upper hand and everyone's just exhausted.
Exactly. Sun Tzu would say, a skilled strategist, they end the conflict decisively, quickly, don't even give that stalemate a chance to form.
Choose your battles, then be in and out. Clean victory. This reminds me of another fascinating concept, Cheng and Qi.
Ah, yes. Cheng being that direct approach, you're going head-to-head with your opponent. But Qi, now that's indirect, unorthodox tactics, the element of surprise, that's how you gain the upper hand. And Sun Tzu uses these really vivid images to describe them. It's kind of cool.
Oh, right. Like when he compares Qi to like water suddenly being released, this unstoppable force, your opponent's caught totally off guard, nothing they can do.
Perfect example. Or that story about Han Shen, leading his army across the Yellow River, but he does it at this seemingly impossible point. Totally flanks his enemy, wins the swift victory because of it.
Rewriting the rules of the game.
Yeah.
Using surprise to do what everyone thought was impossible.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Didn't Sun Tzu also use that analogy of like a grindstone crushing an egg
Yeah.
to illustrate this whole Chang versus Qi thing?
Oh, yeah. I love that analogy. It really gets at this idea of understanding your strengths and your enemy's weaknesses, when and where to apply that strength for maximum impact. You got to know where the weak point is, right?
So there's definitely a theme here. Adaptability, strategic use of deception, aiming for that decisive win so you minimize your losses. What gets me is we can apply this stuff to so many areas of life, not just, actual warfare. What are your thoughts on that?
Right.
Like telling me these ancient battle tactics can apply to like boardroom negotiations or something, or even just like personal goals.
I'm telling you, it's all connected. Think about a big business deal, right? Sun Tzu would say, know your own goals, your limits, sure, but also know their side just as well. What can they do well? Where are they vulnerable? Then you use that knowledge. And remember, all warfare is based on deception.
So maybe don't show all your cards right away. Got to keep them guessing.
Exactly. Be adaptable, be strategic, adjust your approach based on who you're dealing with. And remember those 5 constant factors. Those apply to pretty much any strategic situation, if you think about it.
Okay, yeah, I see it. Give me an example. How does, like, moral law translate to business? I'm having trouble making the leap.
Moral law in a business could be, think about company culture. That strong ethical core, right? That's what motivates people, unites the team. It's that shared purpose, those values that everyone believes in. That's powerful.
In heaven. Would that be like market trends, like you said, stuff outside your control?
Exactly. Earth is your playing field, your industry, who you're up against, the resources you've got access to.
The commander? Well, that's your CEO, or whoever's calling the shots.
And they better embody those qualities Sun Tzu was talking about, or else what's the point? Wisdom, sincerity, courage, gotta be decisive, and method and discipline, that translates pretty directly. You need a plan, right? You gotta be efficient, gotta have your team organized, or it all falls apart.
It's wild how well this stuff translates, even centuries later. But what about on a personal level? You really think Sun Tzu can help us achieve, like, our own goals, not just corporate ladders and all that?
Think about your personal challenges, like battles you need to win. Could be breaking a bad habit, could be finally learning that new skill you've been putting off, or hitting some big long-term goal. Same principles apply, I'm telling you.
Okay, so my battle is, let's say, I want to write a novel, finally. So I got to be strategic about it, like it's a military campaign.
You got it. You need your plan. You got to be
Okay.
consistent. Right. And honestly, you got to understand your own strengths and weaknesses as a writer, just like you would if this was an opposing army.
Sun Tzu would probably say something about knowing your enemy, which in this case is like my own procrastination.
Yeah.
All those times I talk myself out of it.
And then he tell you to get creative, use those indirect tactics to overcome that stuff. Maybe you break that giant novel down into smaller chunks, more manageable. Maybe you find a writing group so you've got support, accountability, whatever works.
It's like he's giving us permission to be a little sneaky, but like in a good way. A little more cunning, you know?
The art of war isn't just about fighting, right? It's about approaching challenges strategically. That's what makes it so interesting and so relevant, even now.
It's amazing how something written so long ago can still feel so fresh. But it's not just about the ideas, right? It's how he says it.
Yeah.
All those metaphors, those lines that just stick with you.
Oh, absolutely. It makes it really fun to read, even if you're not, training for battle or anything. There's this one line that stuck with me. To see victory only when it is within the ken of the common herd is not the acme of excellence.
So, like, it's not enough to just win. You got to win with, I don't know, style,
Yeah.
like an almost poetic mastery of the situation.
You got it. It's that next level strategic brilliance, beyond the obvious. That's what makes Sun Tzu so fascinating. He got it. The nuance of conflict, those psychological games we play, even when it's not a war.
Yeah. And he put it all down so clearly. Be more than just a fighter. Be a thinker, a strategist, be a master of the game. So we've gone deep on Sun Tzu's Art of War. And yeah, we learned about tactics, but also so much more. Wisdom that we can use every day, whatever our battlefield happens to be.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, what really hit home for you? What resonated the most from all this?
There's this idea Sun Tzu talks about balking the enemy's plans. It's huge. Disrupt their strategy before they can even get started.
So a preemptive strike, but like on a whole other level.
Right. You understand what they're going to try to do. Then you take steps to counter it. Don't just wait around and react.
Anticipate and stay ahead. I like it. Proactive, not reactive, right?
Exactly. And honestly, that applies to so much, even outside of war. Think
Yeah.
about business, right? Market shifts, all that. Anticipate the change, adapt your strategy, or get left behind. It's happening constantly.
It's true. Or even just like relationships. If you see a conflict brewing, you address it head on.
Right.
Saves a lot of grief later. It's like Sun Tzu's telling us just be more aware, more
Yeah.
strategic, whatever's going on in our lives, right?
He also reminds us that knowledge, that is power. Remember, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Classic.
Can't go wrong with that one. And it's not just about knowing the other side, it's knowing yourself too.
Hmm.
That's huge.
Self-awareness. Doesn't matter if you're facing a competitor, an opponent, or just those internal battles we all have going on sometimes.
Right. Know your strengths, your weaknesses, just like you'd size up an opponent.
Yeah.
Well, we've gone deep on Sun Tzu's Art of War. And yeah, we've learned some battle tactics. But it's so much more than that. There's wisdom here, stuff we can use every single day, no matter what our own personal battlefield looks like.
For sure. Careful planning, being adaptable, understanding yourself and the people around you, that's how you win, whatever that win looks like for you.
Be strategic, be prepared, always be thinking a few steps ahead. That's Sun Tzu's real lesson. So as we wrap up our deep dive today, one last thought. What battles are you facing right now? And what strategies from Sun Tzu's playbook are you going to use to win? Until next time, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.